Got a good number of people here, so we can go ahead and get started. I want to respect your time and thank all of you guys for being here this morning. My name is Angela, and today we're going to be talking about creating a gallery wall, and specifically the steps you need to take with your pictures to get them ready to print and to make sure they look beautiful on the wall. We're also going to walk through using Printique's Wall Gallery Designer. It's a wizard they have built into their website. It's really cool. And we're going to put together a beautiful wall display of some photos together. So today's presentation is preparing photos for stunning wall art. As I said, my name is Angela. I'm a fine art photographer, photo educator. I'm also the keeper of my family's memories. So I have a lot of family history photos and many generations of media in my library. I'm also a product evangelist for Mylio, and that means I help people learn the Mylio photo software and be successful with it. I do a lot of our documentation. I do webinars like this, all sorts of stuff. I've got my fingers in a little bit of everything. So that's a bit about me. I'm also joined today by Libby from Printique. She's going to be here to give us some product guidance and point me in the right direction when I'm clicking the wrong things on the Printique website and make sure that we're going the right direction. Libby, do you want to say anything real quick?
Just if you haven't heard of Printique yet, we are a photo lab based out of Brooklyn. And you'll find us actually infused into Mylio in one of the drop-down menus for some of the extras. So what's great about it is the integration is that you just sign in once and then you can make photo galleries. Once you have photo galleries, then the sky's the limit. You can make, books, you can make wall decor, you can make prints, calendars. So it's just getting over that initial hump of getting things in over onto our platform, but then it's very intuitive and you'll see it's very easy to work with after that. But I'm a print evangelist, so I just want to make sure that in the world of AI and scrolling that we have tangible prints for the next generation.
Absolutely. So, so important. We're also joined today by Lori Rubin. She's going to be helping out in the chat and in the Q&A, making sure any questions that you have are either answered along the way or we'll have some time for Q&A at the end as well. Just some housekeeping before we dive in. This is being recorded, so if for some reason you need to sign off early or you just want to rewatch it to pick up some of the finer details, this will be posted at community.mylio.com within 1 to 2 business days, and you can go ahead and rewatch it there. So if for some reason you need to drop off and get back to work or whatever you need to do, don't stress, we'll have that available for you. As we go through, if you have general commentary, you want to just kind of comment and chat with other attendees, please use the chat. That's there for you to enjoy. And then if you have a specific question that you would like me or Libby to answer, please be sure to post that into the Q&A. It should be there along the bottom of your Zoom screen, and it might be under the More menu, which is the 3 dots, and you should see something specifically labeled Q&A. We'll do our best if you post questions in the chat to follow up with those as well. They just sometimes, if it's really busy in there, they can get lost. So we do ask that you use the Q&A, just makes it a little easier to keep track of stuff. We also have some special offers going for you during this webinar. If you are new to Mylio Photos and you're just checking out and evaluating that, you can enter MYPH-webinar-10 to get 10% off of an individual or family plan. It's good through March 31st, so through the end of this month. We're also going to have 3 giveaways for $50 Printique gift cards. We'll do those throughout the presentation. We'll pause a couple of times and do those. You do have to be present to win. So if you do have to log off, unfortunately, we won't be chasing you down. You have to be here in order to win those. And I think Libby also mentioned that there was a coupon code that she can share. She's going to go ahead and put that into the chat. So if you don't get to have one of those gift cards, you can still get a nice little discount for whatever you decide to order with Printique. All right. So as Libby mentioned, being a print evangelist, I suppose I am in a way as well, a big proponent of printing your work, whether these are family photos, whether you make fine art photography, whether you're putting together a gallery wall of family history photos, whatever it is you want to display, having those printed and tangible things is so very important. And it's kind of the last step in that creative process. So if you're a creative photographer, taking it to the computer and doing your editing there is not the final step. The final step is getting that physical, tangible print and being able to hang it and display it, whether that's on the wall in your home, in a gallery, and things like that. But there's some things we need to think about when going from the computer to the print to make sure they look their best. So one of the first things that you want to think about is that screens are backlit. When you're looking at your computer, a lot of computers, especially if you haven't taken the time to calibrate it, they're overly bright. So when people get their printed images, they look kind of dark and dull. So keep that in mind as you print. Prints, on the other hand, they're not backlit, but they do reflect light. So the paper that you choose, the material that you print on, how that reflects and interacts with the light is going to define how that picture looks. Another thing to think about, and we'll talk more about this later, is that walls are large. They're often a lot larger than people realize when they're buying prints for their home. There's times that I've purchased, 16 by 20s thinking, oh, that's going to look great on my wall. And I put it up there and it looks so tiny. And much less if you're buying an 8 by 10 or a 5 by 7, they're just minuscule when you put it into the context of a big wall. So keep that in mind. Sometimes you need to either do many more small prints to fill up the space or print a bit larger and get something that actually looks and feels good in that space. The last thing I want to mention here is that small flaws in an image are amplified when you print. As soon as you start blowing it up and you see that physical manifestation of that image, any dust spots, distractions, grain and noise, and anything else that's an artifact in that image is amplified. And honestly, once you see those things, you can't unsee them. And if it's already in the print, it can be very costly to go back and fix because you have to have it remade. So we're going to go through some steps that you can take to make sure your images look their absolute best before you go ahead and click order and order those prints. So as you're getting started, I want to encourage you to use the best possible file that you have available to you. If it's coming straight out of your camera, you're going to want to do some editing and you're going to want to make sure you're using high quality files. The moment you save something as a JPEG and you make changes and you save it, you start losing data. So if possible, I like to say shoot in RAW if you can. And as you're going through and doing your editing, save them as TIFFs. So make sure you have the highest resolution possible and don't downscale anything until the very end if you have to crop things. Be careful with heavy crops because the more you crop in on an image, the more you're losing resolution. If the detail isn't there in the file, it's not going to show in the print. So if you take a really small image and you try to print it big, it's going to look pixelated or blurry because the detail just simply isn't there. So let's talk a little bit about resolution. These are the dots per inch measured in DPI that describe print density in an image. And it determines how large you can print any given image. So 300 DPI is ideal for smaller prints. So if we're talking, kind of up to, I'd say like an 11 by 14, 16 by 20, 300 is ideal. 240 is a very strong quality, so you can drop it down a little bit, still have a very good looking print. To the naked eye, you're not going to notice any degradation. You can even get down to 200 if you're doing something that's a little bit bigger and you're going to be standing farther away from it. And if you're printing very, very large, you can even drop down as low as 150. And this all depends on the viewing distance. So when you're talking about a really small image, you're going to be standing relatively close to the image to look at it. So you want to make sure that's really high quality and you have that print density to give you that detail. If you're standing 6 to 8 feet back, you're not looking at those tiny little pixels and any little imperfections in the resolution, that loss of resolution is not going to be as noticeable. Now, if you go up to a picture that's been printed at, a 40 by 60 and it's huge and you get in, 3 inches away from it, you're obviously not taking in the entire image and its, intended glory, but you will see when that print starts to fall apart if the resolution's not very good. So here are some common print sizes that you might want to think about as you're putting together your prints. An 8 by 10 is relatively small, typically viewed from 1 to 2 feet away. 300 DPI is ideal, and you're going to need approximately 2400 by 3000 pixels. And just let me pop over here to Mylio really quick and show you where you can find that information in your files. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this image here, open up my info panel here on the right, and up at the very top of the info panel, you'll see I've got 5451 by 3634. And that is going to give me plenty of resolution to print quite large. And the higher up I go, You definitely can, you still need to have more pixels, but you can go lower in that DPI, that print density, and still have a very respectable, good looking result. So your 20 by 30 print, you're going to look at that from 5 to 7 feet away. You get up to a 24 by 36, you're 6 to 8 feet away. And something that's as large as a 40 by 60, you're standing across the room to take it all in. So you can drop down to 150 to 200 DPI. I would say 150 is generally the minimum you want to have for those large prints. And that's a really, it's a pretty good size file. So think about that as you're preparing your images to print. How large can you realistically go? One of the nice things about working with Printique is when you upload a file, it will actually show you on a little scale what the quality is going to look like. So it'll be, up towards the right if it's like really high quality and you've got really good DPI and pixel density. And it'll drop down and show you and really give you a visual indicator of how good that print is or how good you can expect that print to be and look. So if you don't have enough pixels, that happens pretty often, especially if you're shooting with an older camera with lower megapixels, or maybe you have an older cell phone. I know a lot of our cell phones actually shoot really big files these days. But you can upscale. There's a lot of different tools out there. We'll talk more about this. And again, 300 DPI is the best, but it's not required. Think about that viewing distance and only upscale if it's necessary. The app that I like to use most for upscaling is Topaz Photo. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a few minutes. But this is something you want to actually do last, that upscaling, because you want to make sure all of your distractions have been edited away. You've got a clean file. You've done all of your editing. Everything else is the way you want it. And then do your upscaling in the very last. So you can see here just a screenshot of a really small image, family history photo. It's a little tiny photo that I scanned. So the original scan was 800 by 1131. Not a whole lot I can do with that. And then using upscaling, I went up to 2912 by 4117. And that gives me a much more respectable size to be able to print. Now, I'm still not going to print this huge, but I certainly could print it a lot larger than I could before. All right, so let's go ahead if we're ready to do our first giveaway. Lori, are we ready for that?
You sure are. Okay, let me make sure we got that person there. So I did a randomizer, and the first person is Arlene Weishun. So Arlene, if you could give me your email address, you can either put it into the chat, or you can just send it to Lori, Laurie, at Mylio.com, and I'll make sure that Libby gets this as well. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Congratulations, Arlene. All right. So some things to think about before you print. There are a lot of issues with images that really don't become noticeable until you have that thing printed large and it's in your hands. So in order to minimize any disappointments when you get your prints, here are a few things that you're going to want to do before you get to ordering. First thing is zoom into your picture at 100% and slowly scan the frame. Don't rely on the fit to screen on your screen. And even if you're looking at a big monitor, still zoom into a 100%. That's where you're going to see things like dust spots. You're going to see little distractions and things that you're probably not going to notice unless you're looking at it at 100%. So let's go ahead and jump over to Mylio. When I say to zoom in and take a close look at stuff, when I'm looking at this on my screen, it looks really, really good. But if I zoom in, you can see there's actually, I think it's a bird, but that little spot, stuff like that is going to look really annoying when you print it. And when you zoom into 100%, what I like to do is kind of take it row by row and scan across the entire image. So I'll start up in the upper left. You can start whatever side you want, and then just slowly move my mouse across and take a look. I might go in and clean up those little birds up there. This little wire sticking out here, I might clean that up just because it's a little distracting and go through. Again, there's a couple more birds and they're just little specks in the sky. If birds are really well defined, I wouldn't take them out. But in this case, that I might get rid of. But those are things you're not going to see unless you zoom in. And so then I'll just go down a little bit and go back across the entire image. And I'm looking for anything that's a distraction. You want to pay a special attention to your skies. And if you have dust spots, if you haven't had your sensor on your camera cleaned in a while, or maybe your phone has gotten dirty and the lens is dirty, take your mouse and jiggle it back and forth a little bit on the screen. That's going to make some of those spots jump out at you. And then you know what to go into Photoshop or whatever tool you use to clean those up. For those little spots that I mentioned, personally, I go into Photoshop and do that, but there are a lot of other great tools that you can use. You can use Luminar Neo. It's got a great clone tool. On One Photo Raw. Affinity Photo, I believe, is free now for a lot of things. Like some of their more advanced tools you have to pay to use. Topaz Photo is for upscaling and noise reduction, things like that. And GIMP is kind of a Photoshop alternative that's free. So lots of options to go in and clean those things up. But definitely zoom in on your pictures and look for those little problems like sensor dust. Another thing to look for is noise in the shadows. If during your editing you brightened up dark areas a lot, it probably revealed some digital noise, which is grain and speckles. And sometimes if it's color, it can be color speckles and very distracting. Doesn't look great when you print. That's when I would go into a tool like Topaz Photo or Luminar Neo. OnRun has a good tool for it, and do some noise reduction. That's going to clean up those areas and make them look more detailed. It'll preserve detail and it will get rid of that unnatural grain. You also want to look for halos and other artifacts. One thing that I will point out in the picture that I just showed you here, I would say this is maybe pushing the limits of how sharp something should be. I think it would print well, especially if I printed it big, because again, you're going to be standing back. But when you zoom in and look, you can see the sharpening on the little edges here, where there's a little bit of a white halo along the edges. If that's really noticeable on the screen when you're zoomed into 100%, it's going to jump out at you when you print. So those are times where you might want to go back into your editing, back it off a little bit, and just make sure those things look really good. Let's see here. Come back. There we go. And then to clean it up, use those healing and clone tools, fix those obvious distractions. And then again, before you upload to Printique, recheck it at 100%. I can't emphasize that enough. I have printed things and wasted paper and gotten back prints that I spent a lot of money on only to have to turn around and redo them because I missed something. So that's not something you can blame the print lab on. Make sure you send them good files. The other thing I would recommend is doing edge patrol. When you're looking at an image, especially if you're going to have it going edge to edge, you want to check all four edges of your print. Anything that's really bright at the edges, try to clone that out or maybe crop it out, because the brightest point in an image is where your eye is going to go. So if that is on the edge, it takes your viewer right out of your picture. Watch out for cut off elements, things that feel awkward or unnatural where they're cropped, and just try to keep your viewer in the frame. So jumping back over here to Mylio, if I zoom back in on this one, I think, where I cut this off here is good, but if I had cut it off kind of in the middle of these turrets, it would maybe look kind of awkward. So think about that as you're composing and deciding how you want your final image to look. Pay attention to those edges. Take a look along the edges, like here's a little speck in the dirt. Maybe I'd get rid of that. And just clean up anything that's going to take your viewer right out of your frame. Another cool tool to use for keeping your viewer in your frame is a very subtle vignette, which is a darkening of the edges. Most photo editing tools have a vignette tool, and you can just put a little bit of darkness around the edges. And again, it just keeps the viewer in the middle. You never want to make it dark enough on the edges to where people are like, oh, I can see that you added a vignette. You want it to be subtle, so just make sure you don't slam that slider and keep it just soft and gentle. All right, let's talk a bit about aspect ratio and cropping. If you don't crop your stuff, the lab will. So if your image is a different size than the print size that you pick, if you don't specify, the lab will do it for you. And chances are they're going to try their best to do it, or their software will try the best to do it. But don't let somebody else decide how you want your image to be framed. You want to have control of that. So the aspect ratio that most cameras have is a 2:3. A lot of common prints are going to be a 4:5, which is an 8:10 ratio, or a 16:20. A square is a 1:1, also very popular. So think about that as you're going through and selecting how you want to crop your images. And if you're going to be doing certain styles of prints and certain types of materials and certain layouts on your wall, you might want to finalize your crop towards the end of your process. You want to make sure that whatever you're sending to the lab is the exact ratio of what you're wanting to print. And again, recheck your composition and edges. So if you've gone through and you've done all of your corrections, If you make another crop to get a certain size, do another check, zoom into 100%, and make sure everything looks really good. You can do your cropping in Mylio. You can do your cropping in just about any other photo editing tool that you want to use. Doesn't matter. I've got a little screenshot here of the crop tool in Mylio, which gives you all the standard sizes. And you can even put in a custom crop if that's what you want to do. So upscaling, this is really going to depend on how big you want to print and how good you want the resolution to be. Not every image needs to be upscaled. So when you might want to consider it is if you're under that target DPI. So if you're printing really big and it's dropping down under 150, you might want to do that. If you're printing something smaller and it's under 200 to 240, you might want to consider giving it a little bit of boost. The other thing is when you crop, if you've cropped in your composition and made it very, very tight and you've lost a lot of that real estate of your frame, you may need to upscale because that cropped version of your image isn't going to have enough pixel density for you to have a good looking print. But again, not every print needs to be upscaled before printing. I do recommend starting with your finished file. So do this as your very last step. If you need more pixels, do it after you've done your editing. Do it after you've done all of your finding distractions. Do it after you've done your final crop. Don't upscale the raw. So if you're starting out with a raw image, do all of your other adjustments first, save it as a TIFF, and then upscale that. And then the last thing you want to do is avoid JPEG compression. Every time you open and close a JPEG file and make changes to it, you're losing a little bit of information. So make sure you're using the highest quality file possible. And again, make sure your files before you upscale are clean, because when you upscale, you're magnifying everything that's there. So if you haven't gone through and done the cleanup of those edges and those dust spots and all of those other little things, all of those distractions are magnified. And especially noise. Clean up noise, do the noise reduction before you upscale, and you're going to have a much cleaner, nicer looking result. So choosing the right tool for upscaling, my favorite, my go-to is Topaz Photo. There are a lot of really great options out there. For an example, this one here on the right, this is the image down here in the bottom right corner that I started with. You can see it was pretty dark. And the bird was a very, very, very small part of the frame. I cropped it into a square, came in really, really tight on the bird. And after making that massive crop, I lost a lot of real estate of that photo. So in order to have something that's a presentable and printable result, I had to upscale it. So it works really, really well, but you have to start with a good file, make sure it's clean before you do the upscaling. Upscaling improves good images, but it can't fix a broken image. So keep that in mind. Again, zoom to 100%. I'm going to say that over and over. When you're doing upscaling, especially with AI tools, watch for AI hallucinations. It can do some really weird things sometimes. So again, zoom to 100% and look at all areas of that image because it might do some very weird things on occasion. It's getting better and better. And 95% of the time, the result is excellent, but you might need to regenerate on occasion if something goes a little bit wonky. Check the textures and the edges and look for repeating patterns. So again, with upscaling, something that's really fine detail like a bird and those feathers, you want to zoom in and make sure that those feathers, that what the AI did to upscale that looks natural and looks good. So like I said, Topaz Photo is my go-to tool for that. There's now some really great upscaling that's built right into Photoshop, and it uses Topaz algorithms. It actually leverages their gigapixel tool for that. And you can do that through, I believe it's like the plugin extras, or I forget what menu that was in. I'd have to go look that up, but you can do it natively in Photoshop now, and you don't have to own Topaz Gigapixel. So if you already have Photoshop, that's an option. Luminar Neo has a good upscaler. On1 Photo Raw is probably the one that's been around in this field. They were the ones that kind of pioneered the upscaling technology with purchasing a company called Genuine Fractals. And that Genuine Fractals technology is what came into their On1 Resize, which is part of their On1 Photo Raw product. And it is just built on that technology. So they've probably been in the game the longest. All of these tools are very respectable. I'm just the most familiar and have been using Topaz for so long. That's still my go-to. All right, so let's talk a bit about Printique and why we love them. So this, as Libby said, is a pro-grade print service. They've got a very user-friendly website, many, many different design options, whether you want to do prints, you want to do books, you want to do gifts like puzzles, so many different options. And we've made it so there's a seamless integration with Mylio Photos. So you can go straight from the share menu to post and send your images without having to worry about making sure you have the right file format and color space and all these other things. Mylio does that for you and sends it directly to Printique. So that's why we're talking about this with Printique today, because I'm going to show you how to design that gallery wall with all of the things that we just talked about in mind with Printique. So let's start by talking about choosing wall art. This is probably the most subjective, and it really depends on you, your style, and the space that you want to put it in. Frame prints are very classic, flexible. I like them very much. I have one gallery wall in my home that is a bunch of artwork that I've gotten from my travels, and those are all framed. On another wall, I have acrylic prints that are more modern looking and they're all grouped together. So it really depends on your style and what you're trying to convey. I've got a couple of examples here of some of the ones that I've gotten from Printique. So this one right here, I'm not sure if anybody can see it. This is one of the metal prints. This is an 8 by 12 size. I don't know if you can see that here. It's not terribly big, but it's very shiny. It's got cool edges. It's ready to hang. But this is definitely a more modern presentation. You could do something like a canvas, which is more classic. It's softer. It's a little bit more forgiving with detail. Looks really nice. You can have it wrapped around the edges. Again, ready to hang. Looks great. So those are a couple of the options there. You can do glass. You can do the acrylics. Libby, is there anything that you want to add about the different materials for printing wall art?
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting because there was a question that came up. It was from someone that asked, "What's the best what's the best print? Is it going to be canvas? Is it going to be metal? How do you find that?" Honestly, it all depends on the individual image and kind of your vision as well too. So, say for instance, you're shooting a fox in a forest, and around the fox is field grass or what have you. You want that detail to come out. You want a little bit of texture. So, canvas canvas or frame print might be your best bet. Say for instance, you take that fox, you put it next to a waterfall. My goodness, metal and or acrylic would look stunning with that water behind it. So there are certain rules, not necessarily rules, but there are certain ways you can go depending on what that individual image is. And of course, if you have an aesthetic or a look, it's best to always kind of keep within that line. So if you're more softer, darker, dense, you would do maybe a metal print, but like a soft finish instead of glossy, or you would canvas. If you like something a little bit more reflective, try a high gloss metal. Or again, the fine art paper would be excellent as well with some of the work, especially what Angela has been photographing. Like as soon as I saw it, as soon as I see an image, I can tell you exactly what it would look great on. Hers would be on fine art paper, it would look amazing. So that's one of the main things. The other thing is there was another quick question I wanted to answer here. Printique does accept TIFF files. Just want to clear that up. We accept JPEG and TIFF, both of them, just so you know, 8-bit or 16-bit.
Excellent. All right, let's go ahead and have a pause for another giveaway.
All righty. So next winner is David Schroeder. David Schroeder, congratulations on that $50 Printique gift card. If you could send me your email, either in chat or you can just send it to Lori@mylio.com. And we'll make sure that Libby gets your email address as well. Congratulations.
Awesome. Congratulations. All right, so designing with Mylio and Printique. What we're going to look at today is their wall design wizard, which can help you put together a gallery wall, kind of a collage on your own wall with your own artwork. We're going to upload photos. We're going to take a look at measurements. One thing that I want to encourage people here is to think bigger than they were expecting. Most people order pieces that are too small. And if you're not sure, like if you look at the wall design wizard and you're like, I don't know, I think that's still going to look too big, tape it out on your wall. Go buy yourself some cheap masking tape and tape it out so you can see what it looks like in that space. And then step back 6 to 10 feet. And you're going to be surprised. You're going to probably think, you know what, I maybe do need to go bigger than I expected. So think about that as you're doing it. What we'll do is create a layout. And Printique has pre-designed layouts, or you can build a custom one, adjust the spacing and the orientation, and use that layout to define how big we want to go. From there, what we're going to do is make a note of our sizes, and then we're going to go back into Mylio and make sure everything is cropped the way we want it before we send it to Printique. So let's go ahead and jump over to Printique first. And if we go up here to the wall decor and into the wall design wizard, we're going to go to create your wall. And there's several different options in here. You can upload your own room photo, or you can use one of the mock-ups that are in here. And it just gives you an idea of what you're working with. So let's go ahead and start with living room. And over on the left, it gives you certain layouts that you can use. And I encourage you to click through these because they're all going to look slightly different. And you can see that even though these are 16 by 20s, they look a little bit small on that wall. So you can click through them. That looks even smaller, 10 by 10s on a big old wall. It really is pretty small. So go ahead and go through these, and you can see this one I actually like a lot because you can get a lot of pictures up there. They're smaller. Smaller images are going to be less expensive, more budget friendly to print. But if you do a bunch of them, you can end up with a really nice collage wall. So it just depends on how busy you want it to be and how you want to put it together. So let's go ahead and pick one of these. I have a lot of images in my collection that are landscape orientation. Some of them are portrait orientation. There's a mix, but a lot of them are landscape. So let's go ahead and go back to, I really like this one, but I think that's a little busy. That's going to take us a little time to fill in. So let's find something a little simpler. Maybe like this one here. I think that'll be a good one for us to do. And again, if this feels too small, you can always add in more images and arrange this. So let's go ahead and start creating. And what it's going to do is ask me initially to pull a gallery of stuff that I've uploaded from Mylio. I haven't done that yet. So I'm going to go ahead and click out of that for the moment. And I'm going to take a look at this. And this is where I can add additional prints. I can go ahead and move things around. I can take that and adjust the placement. So get an idea of what you want. So from here, we've got a 24 by 30, we've got a 16 by 20, an 11 by 14, and a 14 by 11. Those are the sizes that we're going to want to crop in Mylio. So from here, let's go ahead and jump over to Mylio. I've got a gallery of images, and I want to do a wall of my black and white prints from my trip to Scotland. So taking a look at these images and then taking a look at these 4 options, I have 3 that are horizontal and 1 that's vertical. The one that I want to make probably the biggest one here, that 24 by 30, out of all of these images, I'm kind of torn between this one or this one. I think
I like the second one.
this one here. All right, let's do this. So we want to make sure that this is the right aspect ratio, which is a 24 by 30. So here in Mylio, we can go over to the crop tool. And just to make it easy, we can go ahead and put here into the custom and say 24 by 30. And that's going to go ahead and crop that in. And you'll see I'm losing the sides of that image. This is why I'm recommending to you to crop your images before you send it. So you know exactly how this is going to look and make sure it's the image that you want to send. So I'm going to go ahead and move this around and get this to where I think it's going to give me the best interpretation of what I want to show in my wall. And I think that looks pretty good. So I can go ahead and hit return on my keyboard to commit that crop. The cool thing here is that is non-destructive. I can go back in there and I can revert to the full image in Mylio anytime. So this is just cropping it visually. We're not actually losing that data. So if I wanted later on to print that full image in a different size, I absolutely can. So there we go. We've got that one done. And then we've got a 16 by 20. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go back to my grid and I want to, let's flag these as blue so I know which ones are the ones that I want to use. So let's do for a 16 by 20, taking a look here. I think this one actually would be a good one for that. We'll go ahead and use that. And a 16 by 20, we're going to lose a little bit of the sides on this one here too. I'm going to go here to my crop. And just so we know what we're doing here, we're going to do a 16 by 20. And again, you'll see that it shrinks it in a bit. And then we can adjust where do we want that to be. And I think maybe right around there. There we go. And let's go ahead and give that a blue tag so we know that we've selected that one. Let's do an 11 by 14, so another horizontal here. Something maybe a little bit different. Let's do, oh, I like this one. So an 11 by 14 of this, we're going to go into our crop tool, and we're going to go down here to the aspect and 11 by 14. And again, you see I'm losing some of that image, so we can just decide what do we want to keep here and what can go away. And I think that looks pretty good. Hit return. We've now got our crop. We'll mark that with the blue flag. And then our final image is going to be a 14 by 11, so a vertical. So let's go ahead and go back to our grid, find one of our vertical images. I think I would like to use this one. And we're going to go into our crop. And we're going to do, in this case, a 14 by 11. And again, you see it shrinks it down and we have to decide where do we want that crop to sit. And I think that looks pretty good. And we'll go ahead and flag that with a blue. So now we've got our images selected that we want to use for this gallery. We can even filter this. I'm going to open up my quick filters so we can limit this down to only seeing those ones with the blue label. And that just focuses us in a little bit better so we know exactly which images we're working with. And taking a look at that, the other things that we wanted to discuss with each image we want to upload is we want to do that zoom in, check to see that quality. So we're going to do a quick check, zoom into a 100%, and make sure all of our details look good on each one of these images. So make sure you go ahead and do that before you do the upload. So we're going to do that really quick. I'm just kind of giving this a very cursory look. I would do this a lot more methodically and a lot more slowly if we weren't in a live session. But again, we're just looking to make sure that there's no distractions on the edges, there's no dust spots, there's no halos or artifacts, things like that. Now, the other thing that we're going to want to check here, I'm going to go ahead and close up that rating bar, is our resolution. So we have cropped these images. We've lost a little bit of real estate. We want to make sure that these are going to print well. Now, you don't have to necessarily go in and do any math. There are tools inside of Printique that'll give us that indication as well. But you want to make sure you've got at least, a few thousand pixels here to work with after you've done your cropping and you've done your editing. So just taking a look here at the ones, especially that I'm going to be printing larger, those have some pretty good real estate to them. So there we go. Once you've finalized your images and you're ready to send them to Printique and start laying them out on the wall, go ahead and select those images. You're going to go to the share icon here on the right and click Post, Printique, and that's going to go ahead and pull those up on the screen. And you can preview them right here. There we go. And you can choose what gallery those go into. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new gallery, and then we're going to call it Black and White Scotland and save. And then make sure you check off these boxes. One is that you have the right to publish this content, means it's your pictures or you have permission to publish them, to have them printed. And understanding that prints from Printique can only be shipped to the USA and Canada. So we're going to go ahead and click Post. And that's going to send them automatically to the Printique website. You can check on the progress up here in the activities, and you can see it's publishing those images as we speak. So once that's done, we can jump back over to the Printique website and start putting those pictures into our layout. So as I said, you can select the images you want to send. Go ahead and click the share icon, choose Post, Printique, and post them. It's very, very simple. And this integration just makes it so seamless. You don't have to worry about color spaces. You don't have to worry about file formats. You certainly can export something individually and then upload it directly to Printique. There's nothing to stop you from doing that, but you don't have to, which is really, really nice. So let's go ahead and start designing our gallery wall here. I'm going to go ahead and add photos, and I'm going to go to my Printique galleries. And there's my Black White Scotland. And I'm going to go ahead and import all and proceed to edit. So now we get to give a preview of what this will look like. We'll go ahead and grab our first image and drag it onto the screen. and we can decide what materials we want to use. So, Libby, I would love to get your feedback here for these images. You were saying to do framed prints.
Yeah, frame print would be beautiful. Otherwise, the canvas as well would look really great with that.
All right, so let's go ahead and do a framed print. And let's see here. Single mat is good. Paper. Um, what paper would you choose?
Hot press rag. That's
All
yeah,
right,
the finer. Yeah.
excellent. And the regular plexiglass, would you do the
Yeah.
non-glare?
Non-glare.
Non-glare. All right. I think that'll look really good. Let's go ahead and hit apply. And there we get a preview of what that's going to look like. That looks really pretty sharp. So let's go ahead and grab the next image. We're going to pull that onto the screen there. And we're going to do the same thing. Framed prints, hot press rag, non-glare plexi, and apply. And you can see how quick and easy this goes. And you can just pull these onto there, and all of your settings that you had from your previous ones for consistency, you can change it if you want. But for consistency, they're all set the same. So we're going to head and click apply and then grab that last one and drag that there and apply. And so there we have it. Our gallery wall is set, and we get a really good interpretation of what that's going to look like when it's done. Libby, would you change anything?
I'd always change size to go bigger. But no, this is a beautiful layout. I'm a like unless it's over, 20 by 30, it doesn't go up on my walls. So, but no, this is really beautiful. And there's lots of different ways that you can play around. You can also drop, kind of move them around the wall too, if this isn't to your liking. It's very intuitive.
Yeah, so
Oh,
you
the
can,
extra larger white mat looks nice too.
that does. So then we can just spread these out a little bit and just make them a bit bigger. So
This is actually the fun part of designing. Adding things, taking things away until you get it just right. You'll know it clicks once you start playing around with it. I really want to encourage people to play around with their images to see what works best because you never know until you actually see it, right?
exactly. So, and I think you can actually just click and drag this way too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Beth,
this is a lot of
but
fun. This is really cool.
yeah. By the way, Beth just put into chat just to keep in mind that the template is showing the photos a little bit too high. Is the general rule that it's eye level when you're looking at prints on the wall?
Typically,
And
yeah.
we can certainly pull those down. So if you want to
Yeah.
have it a little bit more, this is just a mock-up, and you can actually upload a picture of what's in your own house too, so you can see a little bit more what it looks like. And again, I might actually move these over a little bit because they got a little bit skewed. So, but you get the idea. You have a lot of control here over how you want that to be, and you can do a mix of wider mats and skinnier mats, or you can have them be all the same. How did I get this one here to have the bigger mat? Do I just need to? Oh, there we go. There we go. I like that better.
And
Not
then
sure why some of them
Angela
are.
on the
There we go.
one on the right, could you
Uh-huh.
just zoom in? Could you zoom in on that to see? I want to make sure the cross was still at the top of the.
Yep, it's
Yeah,
still there.
yeah, perfect.
Yeah, definitely. You want to check that as well. So let me just let's see here. Not sure. Yeah, actually, I like that better, a little bit smaller. How do you get it to change the mat width
Uh,
here?
you can push up to undo up there on the left hand, or you should be able to push it back down.
Where are you seeing? Where is the undo? I'm missing that. Oh, there it
So
is.
undo is up at the, yeah,
There we go.
let's see, that'll bring it back down. There you
There we
go.
go. Okay, move that back over. There we go. So that looks pretty good. I might still tweak it a little bit, but once you get it to your liking, we could sit here and play with this all day. This is really the fun part, but it's so subjective as to how you want the gallery wall to look in your home. So play with it, get it dialed in, and then go ahead and do a print preview. And what this is going to do is show you exactly what you're getting, the price of each print, and you can go ahead and take a look at each one of those things. And then once you're ready, go ahead and do the order. and that puts all of it into your shopping cart, and you can go ahead and check out. And all of that will be delivered to you in pristine condition that it's ready to hang on your wall, and it's going to look absolutely amazing. Libby, is there anything else that you want to add there?
No, I believe so, but there is when you do receive the prints, I will also say we have a guarantee. If there's any sort of issue with shipping or damage, we'll always replace it for free. Our customer service is more like a concierge, so when you call in, you're going to be talking to a human being, and they're going to help you through the ordering process as well too.
Awesome. That's always nice. And that's something you don't get a whole lot these days, actually talking to humans. So, to kind of recap this whole process of creating your own gallery wall, first thing you want to do is start with the right file. Make sure you have a high quality file, shoot with RAW when you can, work with your TIFFs, and make sure you're saving them at the highest quality possible. Take it some time to understand resolution and pixel density and know that the more pixels you have, most likely the better your print is going to look. Now, you can't just take it and scale it and just drag it bigger and make it look good. You do have to use interpolation software to do that, something like a Topaz Photo, something to upscale. Make sure you're inspecting the results of whatever edits you do at 100%. As you saw throughout the presentation, there's areas where I could zoom in and fix tiny little things that are going to be very, very obvious when that print is on the wall. So make sure you take the time before you print to do that, because we can expect that Printique and other labs will correct things if they get damaged in transit or if for something happens in the print process. But if we send them bad prints, that's not their fault. So we want to make sure we send them the best possible file, and that's going to give you the best results. Clean up those distractions, crop with intention, look at your edges, look at where the composition lies as you're cropping. Make sure your subject still looks good and make sure the whole image looks balanced. Do that upscaling if necessary. And then when you're ready to start putting these things on the wall, take a look at your surroundings and your own style. What do you want to convey in the styling of those images? Are you looking for a really classic look or something ultra modern or something you like more the cottage look? It's all going to really depend on what types of media you choose to print on, how that's going to look in your home. So think about that. There's no right or wrong answer, but certain things do lend themselves, certain subject matter lend themselves to certain kinds of prints. So think about that as you choose what media you want to use. And then the super fun part, upload those images to Printique, go in and design your wall, move things around, adjust the size. It's going to be so much fun to do that. And then you can go ahead and put it in your shopping cart and you're ready to print with confidence. So from there, I want to go ahead and we can do our final giveaway and then we can open up the floor for Q&A.
Okay, the last giveaway is going to Shirley Pruitt. Shirley Pruitt, congratulations. Please send me your email either in chat or lori@mylio.com. Congratulations.
Congratulations. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the questions. You guys want to just read them off to me, or how do we want to do this?
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
before we, sorry, Laurie, before
No,
we
good.
start with the questions that are still there,
Mhm.
one question that a customer had was about whether Mylio retains the original when you crop a photo, which of course Mylio is non-destructive, so it does. But then
Yes.
they had a follow-up questions as to, can I see what photos have been cropped? And I was explaining to them that yes, there's something called an annotation in Mylio that shows you an icon representing that that photo has been edited. So I was hoping, Angela, that you could just demonstrate that really quickly. It's right there is the
So,
little pencil.
yep, that little pencil shows that it's been edited. And I can go back into this image and into the crop tool if I want to reset that at any time and get back my full image. And then go
Thank you.
ahead, just click done, and yeah, that's there.
Yeah. So when we crop something, a version of that crop image is sent as an export to Printique. But in your Mylio library, the original is always retained, and you can always go back and create different versions of it.
Yep, love that non-destructive thing.
All right. Uh, then Harold had a question about if you select a frame and a mat, he presumes 11 by 14 is actually printed as 9 by 12 rather than cut off the edges of the photo. I think the tool shows you both the size of the frame and the size of the mat cutout.
Yeah, so this is a framed print 23 by 13 that I selected here for this one. Let's see, we can go here to edit that. And you've got your image size and your outer dimensions, so you can control that. And again, if you go into that edit, here's that photo quality. So I'm not up here at the 300, but I am here in the good section. So I think that's still acceptable. If it starts dipping down here is when I start to get a little concerned and maybe want to up-res that. But as long as it's, here and above, I'm pretty happy with the print. Because again, you're not going to be looking at it, inches away. But that gives you those dimensions there. All right. What else have we got here? Go ahead and pull the Q&A over here so I can read it properly. Why would you try to print a large image at less than 300 dpi? I've always understood that 300 is the print minimum. So that's actually not the case. You can print at a lower DPI and still have a very good quality print. It's really up to you. If our human eyes can only see so much, and you're only going to be getting so close to a piece of paper or a print to look at it. So if you're across the room, having it be a little bit lower DPI, no one is ever going to know. It's only if you're going up and doing that pixel peeping that somebody might know, or you're looking at it under a microscope. But our human eyes can't perceive that 300 DPI. So if you want to upscale to always have 300 DPI, you absolutely can. It's just not necessary in all of those particular times. Alyssa asks, is zooming beyond 100%, 200, 300 overkill? Not necessarily. I mean, it depends on what you're looking for. A lot of times, once you get to 200% or 300% especially and above, you're going to start really having the image kind of fall apart in that you're going to see defects that you're never going to see in the print. At 100%, that's stuff that you're going to see and notice. But you start going up beyond that, then then the image is going to start to look blurry. You're going to start questioning yourself. So there may be times where you might want to go a little bit more zoomed in, especially if if you don't have that many pixels to begin with. But in most cases, 100% is perfectly adequate. Ted's saying, I see that dragging a quarter stretches the photo. Does not change the cropping. So it really depended on how I was dragging the corners. I know some of it, I think it was just part of the rendering when it was stretching, because once I let go of it, it just cropped it differently when I was stretching it on the wall and looking at those different sides. Question here for Libby. What is the archival quality of the prints?
So the interesting thing about Printique is we are one of the few labs still around that does something called silver highlight printing. That's been around for, more than 200 years. But basically, your image is going to be infused into your photographic paper, as opposed to nowadays everything is digital offset, where it's a bunch of dots that just land on a paper to make your image. So we still use the tried and traditional method of silver highlight printing. Some of our items are digital offset printing, such as like some of the fine art paper and that type of thing. But for the most part, all of it is silver highlight, and it will last you for generations.
Awesome. And then question here from Brandon. I addressed this question in the beginning, but what brightness, exposure, contrast modifications do you recommend doing during editing before export for print? So it really depends on the image. And if you're very concerned about this, I would suggest calibrating your monitor. You can get a colorimeter, which is a little device that you temporarily hang on your monitor. It measures the brightness, the contrast, the white balance. So you get the most accurate look when you send that, because what the calibration is at the lab may not be what the calibration is of your monitor. And monitors do tend to drift, so they do need to be profiled fairly regularly. It's recommended to do it, I think, at least every couple of months if you are printing a lot and you're really concerned about that specific set of settings. But in general, I would say if you're looking at it on a really bright monitor, you might want to nudge the brightness up a little bit for printing, because you're going from a backlit image on your screen to a front lit reflective surface on a paper. So a lot of times people are concerned when they get their prints look a little bit too dark. It's because their monitor was actually a little bright. So if your monitor tends to run bright, that's like how you like to look at it, nudge your brightness up a little bit. There's also in a lot of the print labs, and I believe that you have it here, there is a checkbox to auto adjust your pictures. Um, where is that, Libby? I feel like that should be in here somewhere.
Yeah, it's going to be on the initial, it should be on the initial one. Oh, actually,
Okay. Usually there's a checkbox in here so where you can have the software auto adjust it, and it might be when we first uploaded it and we're looking at it. But that also is an automatic adjustment that the print lab can make that compensates for a lot of those kinds of things. So they look at the image and they make any adjustments. So if you are not real confident with your own photo editing, it's not a bad thing to go ahead and check that box and have the lab do their auto correction. If you are a fine art photographer and you know your craft with Photoshop and you're very confident in your monitor's calibration and everything else, make sure you have that turned off because that can skew what it's going to give you in the final result. So if you don't do a lot of editing, go ahead and check that box. If you're very confident in your editing, leave that box unchecked.
Hey,
All right.
Angela, there's a
Yes.
question from John.
Uh-huh.
And John is asking, maybe you can give him a tip. He's got 500 plus great shot. Well, he said 500 plus great shots of Ireland last week. How do I pick 5 to 10 to work with? Millions more in Mylio waiting to see a wall. I got Mylio to go from terabyte drives to wall overwhelmed. Maybe you can give him a tip.
So using, I would start with like the quick review mode in Mylio. So when you're in Mylio, if you're looking at a folder full of images, go to the tools over here on the left. Let me go ahead and get that out of the way. Go to the tools on the left. Come on. My Mylio is being really laggy today. I'm not sure what's going on here. Okay. In the tools here on the left, there's an option called quick review. Go ahead and go into that. That allows you to move through your images and it puts you into this view where you're just looking at minimal. There we go. It just popped up. There we go. Quick review. And so start at the beginning and you can add stars and flags to your images. On a computer, you can do P for pick, and that gives you the pick flag right here, or X for reject. So if you have something that's blurry, obviously not something you want to use, candidate to be thrown away, you can go ahead and mark it as reject, or you can go ahead and add stars if you're ready at this point. And then it automatically advances to the next image. And that's how I work through things. And then I use those quick filters to go through and say, okay, now I only want to look at the ones with my pick flags. So my process is first to do flags. And then I will filter to see only my picks. Those are the ones that I go through and do my editing on. As I'm doing my editing, I'll add usually a 3, 4, or 5 star because anything that's a 1 or 2 star, I've pretty much already filtered out. So I'll add 3, 4, or 5 stars. And then anything that's in that 4 and 5 star category, those are the ones that I'm going to consider putting up on my walls. And so I just kind of narrow it down, narrow it down, narrow it down as I go through my process. We do have some coffee breaks we've done recently on these culling techniques. Hopefully, Lori might have already put them into the chat. If not, you can go to the community and under coffee break replays, there's some in there for quick filters, for flagging, and some other ones that you might be interested in.
Great. We have a question about printer
One thing
profiles.
I'm
Oops.
sorry. One thing I would add about narrowing down your selections. I go through this a lot, and Angela and Lori can attest to this. But one of the things I do is I get people to vote. I create a batch of images and I create a share gallery in Mylio, which is very easy to do, right? I create an album and then I share that album as a quick web gallery. And then I send that gallery to friends or family and I say, hey, which ones of these do you like better? And I keep a tally, and the ones that people tend to like the most are the ones that I tend to print. So don't hesitate to, get a little bit of help from your friends. That it's always good to get um that objective view from other people. But good luck.
Absolutely.
That's part of the process, but it's also fun.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Lori, I interrupted you.
No, that's a great tip. There was a question about printer profiles. Can we talk a little bit about that?
So I mean, when I use printer profiles, it's when I'm printing on my printer here at home. Libby, do you have anything to add for printer profiles for working with print labs?
For Printique, what we typically do, and I put my email in there, because it's changed a lot over the years, we do something called a soft proofing. So we'll get you set up that you can order like 3 or 4 images so you can see it actually, um, and have it delivered to you so you can compare it to your actual image that you see on the screen. But again, remember that the light is coming through the image, and what you actually get is the print that it will actually come out to be. So that's why we do more of a soft proofing, because there's still some variations that could happen along the way. So
Excellent.
I think the one more question in chat from Harold asking about recommendations for available frame sizes versus size of prints. Or are the frames
So,
customized for the photo?
if you're ordering directly from Printique and you're ordering one of the framed prints there, the mat is cut specifically for that frame for that print. So you don't have to worry about that. If you're doing your own and you're just ordering a print and then you're going down to the store and buying your own frame and mat, if you're buying a pre-cut mat, you're obviously limited to what size of pre-cut mats are at the store. If you have the ability to have a mat cutter, you can cut your own custom mats. That's oftentimes what I do. If I have something that's sized differently, or if I want it to be kind of that gallery look where it's a heavier mat at the bottom and a narrow mat at the top. So you could do that. As far as a chart of recommendations, I know if you go onto the Printique website and you look through that wall wizard, it does show you some of those things. Libby, do you have any other resources that you would suggest for that?
yeah, actually there's a bunch of samples out there too. If you hate to say it, but if you go to Chat GPT, that could actually give you a good base too. You can upload the photo and talk about, kind of your goals. I hate to say Chat GPT, but sometimes if you don't know where to start, it's a good starting point, at least to get you in the right direction. That doesn't mean it's going to be correct or right, but at least it gives you some ideas.
Perfect. That's a great tip. Looks like last question here is from Lee. The tool to assess your monitor for brightness and printing. So the general term is a colorimeter. The one that I use is a Calibrite Color Monkey. Let's see, do I even have it? It's on my desk here somewhere, I think. Okay, maybe not. But it's a little gadget. The brand is Calibrite. There's also Data Color Spider. There's a few different brands out there, but go to Adorama or one of the other camera stores, look for colorimeter, and there's a good variety of them out there, and they range from a couple $100s on up. So depending on what you need to do with it. Let's see here. Adam says, can you discuss issues with sharpening images prior to printing? So in general, I do recommend that images should be sharpened, but that just depends on what you're looking for in your image and what the image needs. There's a lot of software does auto sharpening for you these days, depending on what tools you're using. So there's always some level of sharpening added there. But certainly you can go into a tool like Topaz Photo or Luminar, and they have sharpened tools. So if your image is a little bit soft and you need to give it a little bit more emphasis, you can do that as well. So there's kind of general sharpening that every image needs a little bit of. If you shoot raw, especially because those are unsharpened. If it's a JPEG out of the camera, that has sharpening already applied. And then there's sharpening tools that are related to AI that can help, doesn't usually fix, but can help images that might be a little bit soft. So it just depends on what the image needs and what I'll add. And I do try to be selective about it and not over sharpen the whole thing. Because like I pointed out in that one image in Mylio here, see, might even be able to see it in one of these here. This one doesn't have, okay, you can see a little bit of the edge sharpening that happened here, that little white edge. That kind of stuff you want to be careful for, because if it's too big and too noticeable, that is what's going to pop out at you and you're going to see that as a defect in a print. A little bit of that is what causes the differentiation and makes that edge look defined, but you get too much of it and it can start to look really, really wrong.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, you can get some artifacting if you over sharpen things. So I always suggest that you zoom in on the main focus point of that image and look for those artifacts, particularly if you're going to print very large,
Hmm.
because those artifacts will show in large prints. Um, it's better to get the image sharp in the camera rather than try to post process. So learn how to use your camera. Modern cameras have fantastic autofocusing tools that help you get things as sharp as possible. So always good to learn those techniques.
Yeah, between the autofocus and the cameras these days and image stabilization, yeah, it makes a world of difference. I have my images are a lot sharper these days than they used to be 5, 10 years ago. All right. I think that is everything. Want to thank
There
you
was
guys all again. Oh, go ahead.
one last question, actually, is to JC, what he typically prints his underwater images on.
Oh,
Yeah, so because of the color variance of my photos, the metal reproduction is superb, and this is something that I consulted with Libby on, and she was right. Um, the color reproduction is really pristine on those metal frames. I think an acrylic print would also work pretty well, um, just because there's a lot of dynamic range in my underwater photos, where there's dark areas that are very dark and bright areas that are very bright, and the metal printing does an incredible job of that. How do I feel that would work for wildlife? What do you think, Libby? I think it depends on the content of the image, right?
Depends on the image. Yep, totally.
mm,
That being said, if you're sold on metal, as one of your favorite mediums, there are two finishes. Well, there's actually four, but there's a high gloss and then very reflective, which works perfect for JC. There's also a softer satin matte. So metal could work without seeing the image. I wouldn't know unless I'm seeing the image. But I will say what I love about metal too is that it comes complete. You don't need a frame, and it's nothing but the image. It's same with canvas and acrylic. So it makes it, if you're exhibiting and that type of thing, just a little bit easier. And plus, it's just a lot more durable.
excellent. All right. Well, I think that covered all the questions. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope this was useful and you learned a couple of tips to make better prints. And now you're going to go out and design a beautiful gallery wall in your house. Thank you so much to Libby for chipping into this presentation and also to Lori and JC for helping out with chat and questions and everything. You guys are awesome. So hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. And we look forward to seeing you at some of our other events. The recording will be posted here within a couple of days. So if you want to go back and reference, you are welcome to do so. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.